Every time we turn on the news, there's more devastation, more war, more shootings, the immigration crisis, and now the topic of abortion. Pro life or pro choice? The choice to take life or the choice to keep it. This speech is not intended to condemn anyone or to shame anyone. My only intention is to expose the murderous ideology on which abortion is founded on. Meet Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger was born Margaret Louise Higgins on September 14th, 1879 in Corning, New York. Sanger grew up in a large family, being the sixth child of 11. She would go on to become a nurse and get involved in socialist activities. Sanger claims in 1904 she had to save her unwanted niece after being thrown in a snowbank, and that made her seek out and pursue to end dangerous and illegal abortions. But it's my ambitions to show you that her intentions are much more sinister than that to spare women from unwanted pregnancies, but instead to exterminate those who she felt were not worthy to have children.
Well, I think the greatest sin in the world is bringing children into the world that have disease from their parents, that have no chance in the world to be a human being, practically. Delinquents, prisoners, all sorts of things just marked when they're born. That, to me, is the greatest sin.
Additionally, Margaret Sanger has a well-known history that's steeped in prejudice and racist behavior, even conducting speeches at the Ku Klux Klan rally. Don't take it from me, here are some well-known quotes from Margaret Sanger herself, which she spoke about. In an autobiography titled Margaret Sanger, published in 1938, on page 3066, she writes, I accepted an invitation to talk to the women's branch of the Ku Klux Klan. I was escorted to the platform, was introduced, and began to speak. In the end, through simple illustrations, I believe I had accomplished my purpose. A dozen invitations to speak to similar groups. In another quote, she says, it is a vicious cycle. Ignorance breeds poverty. Poverty breeds ignorance. There is only one cure for both, and that is to stop breeding these things. Stop bringing to children whose inheritance cannot be one of health or intelligence. Stop bringing into the world children whose parents cannot provide for them. The undeniably feeble-minded should indeed not only be discouraged, but prevented from propagating their kind. Don't take it from me. Take it from Planned Parenthood itself. In July of 2020, Planned Parenthood issued a statement by Karen Seltzer that states, the removal of Margaret Sanger's name from our building is both a necessary and overdue step to reckon with our legacy, acknowledge Planned Parenthood's contribution to historical reproductive harm with communities of color. Margaret Sanger's concern and advocacy for reproductive health have been clearly documented, but so too has her racist legacy. There is overwhelming evidence for Sanger's deep belief in eugenic ideology, which runs completely counter to our values at Planned Parenthood in New York. Moving her name is an important step toward representing who we are as an organization and who we serve. So how is it that Planned Parenthood and the abortion continues on despite its murderous legacy and racist eugenics ideology? I'll tell you why. It is $1 billion business in which the government and doctors have made lucrative lifestyle despite the blood on their hands. The abortion industry brings in approximately $831 million through their abortion service alone. If you add in the $333.7 million more that Planned Parenthood receives annually in government grants and contracts, the annual dollar amount moves well past $1 billion a year. Despite Margaret Sanger being disavowed by Planned Parenthood continues the mission and legacy of Margaret Sanger, as 70% of abortions are committed by people that are not white. We're all familiar with Roe versus Wade and its common practice of abortion nowadays, and how it's pushed on us by the media and our education system. So what exactly is abortion? Well, Let's find out firsthand from a doctor who's performed them.
And then for second trimester, it's a little bit more involved. Oftentimes you have to dilate the cervix ahead of time, because if you try to mechanically dilate the cervix, it can lead to damage to the cervix. Then you just reach in with a heavy duty clamp and grab whatever you can grab, an arm or a leg usually. And as you're pulling it through the cervix, the body's too big, so it's not going to come. And so with enough traction and twisting, the arm or the leg comes off. And you do that until you've got everything you can. And then you have to reach up and try to crush the bigger parts, so like the chest, and eventually the head. And then you just bring them out in pieces. You can tell when you've crushed the head because the white brains leak out.
If that wasn't graphic enough, now Governor Janet Mills is planning to introduce a bill to the state of Maine to expand abortion rights. The following is extremely graphic but necessary to show how grotesque abortion is. This is an abortion performed during the first trimester. As you can clearly see, you have legs, head, arms. This abortion was performed at 14 weeks. You can clearly see the outline of an arm. This child was aborted June 20th, 1988 at the Metropolitan Medical Services. Now we're getting into the second trimester, of which Janet Mills is proposing. You can clearly see a child approximately 7 inches long that's been killed. This was performed between 14 and 16 weeks. This is another late-term abortion of which Janet Mills is proposing. Lastly, here's another child that's been sucked from the womb and thrown to the garbage. Millions of lives have been discarded and thrown to the garbage. Literally. How long will we continue to let this injustice and murder of children continue? Say no to LD 1619.